right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Calgary Barbell HQ. We're doing our first Form Check Friday from out here in the main area, and we hope you're all happy with this dog farting on me as we get started. Always fun, always exciting here at HQ. So for anybody who's not sure what's about to happen, basically we have our viewers send videos in to us. I, a powerlifting coach, go ahead and pick through and try to offer techniques on videos that have been submitted. If you're looking for how to submit, check the description box below. We actually just have a nice, easy form you can complete, attach a Google Drive link, and send it off to us. So with all that being said, let's get into it. Now, we also leave last week's video for all of y'all to critique in the comments, and then start off this week with my take on the same lift. So we are revisiting Helen's bench press here. Now, Helen's been powerlifting for 6 months. She's done 2 bench-only competitions in IPF affiliated federations. She says bench is her favorite exercise, but her butt comes up off the bench. And she'd like some advice specifically for that. So first thing, let's watch this set and see if the butt does come up all the way off the bench. Now, looks to me like, yeah, we're floating a little bit. And there we go. On that last rep, it's almost after lockout, which is interesting. A lot of the times it's right as the bar comes up off the chest that we start to see the butt come up. Now, my biggest recommendations for keeping the butt glued to the bench is, number 1, after you set your butt down here, contract your glutes, squeeze your butt as hard as you can, right? Try to apply as consistent a leg drive pressure as possible from unrack to re-rack. You want it to try to be a continuous pressure. The other big cue that I try to give my lifters is that you should try to apply leg drive back as opposed to trying to leg drive up, right? If you're thinking about leg driving up, then that's when we run into issues with the butt coming up. If we're thinking about leg driving pressure backwards into the shoulders in order to keep the shoulders locked down and the chest driven up back like this, oftentimes that's a little bit more sustainable in terms of maintaining contact here. So one of the issues with having a sort of variable amount of leg drive is that when you apply extra leg drive, the position changes in some cases, right? Whereas if we're continually applying nearly 100% pressure, then we can gauge that pressure, such that the butt's not gonna come up off the bench. So those would be my biggest suggestions for trying to eliminate the butt coming up off the bench. I'm just gonna get my notes queued up for our next lifter, who is Relja. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name anywhere close to correctly. I apologize if I butchered that. So he's a Serbian lifter, 74 kilo junior competitor, I believe at the national level right now. So he says his squat is plateaued at 200 kilos. He's having trouble getting past that. Now, he says he has a hard time keeping his back tight. And he also says he's not sure what people mean by building tension in the quads when they squat. That's, I guess, a cue that he's been trying to implement that hasn't been really working or making a whole lot of sense. The other thing is that what he says when he tries to be tight in the bottom, he either A, misses depth, or B, doesn't have any momentum out of the bottom. So the biggest things here are, number 1, I don't think your back tightness is really lacking that much. It looks to me like your upper back is staying in a really good position throughout. I do see why you would want to be thinking about a little bit more control in the bottom. And realistically, that's because we're seeing a pretty distinct lapse in tightness as we get to depth. So the fact that implementing those cues of just adding some control, adding some tightness haven't really been useful is probably mostly because you're bad at those things, right? If you don't regularly create a lot of tension going into the bottom, and you don't regularly train from, let's say, a dead stop out of the bottom of the squat, you're going to have a hard time slowing down because of the way that you've trained, because of the way that you've adapted to this skill of squatting. Now, I'm not saying this is absolutely going to break your plateau, but I would say that implementing some variations of your squat where you're intentionally starting with less bounce, less rebound, less momentum, if you will, is going to be very beneficial, because that'll allow you to control the bottom position better and start to produce more force from that semi-disadvantaged position that is the bottom of the squat. Now, if you just continue training the way you're training, you try some cues, they don't really work. Well, a lot of the times, if we want to train these different qualities, and in this case, we want to probably train some more control, some more consistency, and some more tightness in the bottom. If you just try to implement that into your comp squat, well, that just may make for a really crappy feeling comp squat. But if you were to implement that on a secondary squat day as a paused squat, then you might find some success with it, because you're not trying to hit the same numbers that you're going to hit on your comp squat day. You're not trying to see the same adaptation or the same sort of E1RMs. You're not trying to see the same top end or the same load on the bar, and you're realizing that, okay, this is a different movement that I'm probably not going to be quite as strong at, but that's likely going to allow you to train those qualities, develop those qualities, and then hopefully transfer those qualities over to your competition squat variation. So in your case, I would probably implement some pause squats as well as some pin squats. I think would both be a good thing to try. Maybe even some tempo paused squats if you want to go that route. Up next, we have Ariel, and Ariel is doing 405 for a triple. Now, recently switched to sumo only a few weeks ago, currently pulling double overhand, learning hook, but just pulling double overhand right now, which is wild to me. And just looking for critique on the start position and the stance. So, number one, pulling double overhand, no hook, no mixed grip, puts you at a disadvantage. It's very likely that you are considerably stronger than this, able to move a very, appreciable amount more in terms of load on the bar, simply by being better anchored to the bar. If we're not able to apply full force into the bar, which is often the case when the grip is slipping, if you've ever done a deadlift where the grip starts to slip, or if you've ever deadlifted with torn calluses, or on a day where your grip is really crappy, you'll notice that your entire deadlift feels terrible. So the biggest thing I would recommend is find a grip that you can really securely hold, because it does look to me like maybe the lockouts are a little shy here. Maybe the bar is slipping out of your hands and rolling a little at the top. So you're not going to be training your lockout as well as you could, because of the fact that that bar is rolling out of your hands, and you're not going to be applying as much pressure or pushing as hard as you're capable of, because of the fact that the bar is rolling out of your hands. So we have a couple of videos on hook grip on the channel. There's a whole bunch of other great videos on hook grip out there if this is how you prefer to pull. But, I would hook grip your heavy stuff, use straps for your other stuff, and your training is going to be much, much better for it. Now, I know that's not necessarily what you asked for, but, we can get into the start position and stance stuff now. So, in terms of your start position and stance, I think they're both pretty great, actually. I think the biggest cue that I would probably give you as a lifter would be to try to just keep your knees wedged forward as you start the pull. It looks like there is a little bit of a tendency for you to translate that load back onto the posterior chain more, and for the knees to kind of come back off the floor, which is going to in turn throw your upper body forward, moving those shoulder blades a little more forward, and putting us in more of a stiff-legged position. So, in my opinion, what I would want you to do is be a slight bit more patient off the floor. Rep 1 looks really good. Again, the lockouts look a little dodgy, but again, because the bar's rolling out of your hands. So you got to sort that grip. But in terms of the start position, I think that maintaining the start position just a little bit better, keeping those knees forward, really driving the quads off the floor, searching for that push, that leg drive feeling in the initiation of the lift is going to be key. And stance width, I think, is perfect for your anatomy. I think this is probably exactly where I would want you to squat, to deadlift, if I was coaching you. And that brings us to the next one. So we actually have kind of an interesting two-parter here. That's actually part 2. Here we go. So part one here, this is Renelle. Now, Renelle has been squatting barefoot, and that's this one, or in barefoot style shoes, in this case socks. And that's how she normally does it, and that's how she's comfortable. Now, she's worried a little bit about depth in the barefoot shoes, or in socks. Wants to compete, not sure if depth is there, and has tried a bunch of different cues in terms of pushing the knees out or a wider stance, toes out, and now is thinking about adding in squat shoes. So number one, she wants to know, is this depth in the barefoot? Because she says this is much more comfortable to squat without the raised heel. So number one question, is this depth? And is there any way to fix it if it's not without changing shoes? Number two, she also submitted a video of her in squat shoes. So if we take a look at her squatting in squat shoes, does this fix the problem? Now, she didn't necessarily allude to whether or not this feels a whole lot better or worse. I think it's likely probably going to be one of those, okay, well, we just need to adapt to it and get used to it if it does solve the problem. But I'm actually going to leave this video for our audience to go ahead and head into the comment section below. Let me know what you think about Renelle's squat. Does she need the squat shoes? If not, how can we work on the depth to get her to competition depth? She did mention that she aspires to compete relatively soon, so let us know what you think in the comments below. Peace!